The shadow of history often falls long and dark, casting a stark light on contemporary events and forcing a difficult reckoning with the past. 58 years ago, on March 16, 1968, the United States Army perpetrated one of the most horrifying war crimes in American military history, an event that would forever stain the nation's conscience, the My Lai Massacre. Today, as new reports of civilian casualties emerge from conflict zones, particularly in the contentious relationship between the United States and Iran, the echoes of My Lai resonate with a chilling familiarity, prompting a profound question about how little, if anything, has truly been learned from such catastrophic errors. The events of that fateful day unfolded in the small, unassuming hamlet of My Lai, nestled within the Sun My commune of Quang Ngai Province in South Vietnam. Troops from Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, Americal Division, had been dispatched on a search-and-destroy mission, a common but often brutal tactic of the Vietnam War designed to root out Viet Cong forces. Commanders had primed their soldiers to expect fierce resistance, feeding them intelligence that suggested the area was a Viet Cong stronghold. However, this intelligence proved fatally flawed. Upon entering My Lai, the soldiers encountered no enemy combatants, no armed resistance, and no signs of military activity. Instead, they found only the most vulnerable members of a rural community, elderly villagers too frail to flee, mothers clutching their infants, and children too young to comprehend the unfolding horror. Despite the absence of a discernible enemy, Charlie Company, fueled by a potent mix of warrior ethos, previous encounters with booby traps elsewhere, and a dehumanizing perception of the Vietnamese population, proceeded to systematically murder hundreds of unarmed civilians. The massacre began under the command of Captain Ernest Medina, with direct orders reportedly given by Lieutenant William Calley. Soldiers fired point-blank into crowds of villagers, leaving no one spared. Families were rounded up, forced into groups, and executed with automatic weapons, grenades, and small arms fire. The methodical nature of the slaughter was particularly gruesome. At one point, in a chilling display of efficiency, dozens of civilians were herded into an irrigation ditch. As terrified children pressed against their parents in a screaming, struggling mass, their bodies were ripped apart by high-velocity, full metal jacket rounds, turning the ditch into a grotesque tableau of corpses suspended in blood-red water. Any survivors attempting to crawl from beneath the dead were immediately shot. The brutality extended beyond mere gunfire. The homes of the murdered villagers were torched, transforming the tranquil rural commune into a hellscape of smoke and ash. Grenades were indiscriminately thrown into the village's makeshift bomb shelters, ensuring no refuge for those seeking to escape. Some victims, including women desperately holding their children, were bayoneted at close range, while crying infants were stabbed where they lay. Reports also detailed the horrific sexual violence perpetrated by the soldiers, with at least 20 Vietnamese women and girls subjected to rape or gang rape and sexual torture. The massacre continued for hours, a relentless campaign of terror and destruction. In an almost unfathomable display of detachment, the American soldiers paused at midday for a calm lunch break, after which they reloaded their weapons and resumed the killing. The sheer scale and sustained nature of the atrocity left an indelible scar on the landscape and on the collective memory of the Vietnamese people. Initially, the U.S. military attempted to cover up the massacre, downplaying the casualties and portraying the operation as a successful engagement against the Viet Cong. However, the truth began to emerge through the courageous efforts of soldiers like Ron Ridenour, who wrote letters detailing the atrocities, and investigative journalists such as Seymour Hersh, whose reporting brought the horrific details to light in November 1969. The revelation of My Lai shocked the American public and the world, fueling the burgeoning anti-war movement and sparking a national debate about the morality of the war, the conduct of U.S. troops, and the accountability of military leadership. While Lieutenant Calley was eventually convicted of premeditated murder, becoming the only soldier found guilty of crimes related to My Lai, many higher-ranking officers faced little to no serious repercussions, a fact that underscored a perceived systemic failure in accountability. Decades later, the physical site of My Lai remains a somber memorial, a place of quiet reflection and remembrance. In 2016, during a Fulbright visit to Ho Chi Minh City, formerly Saigon, an American professor teaching a 5-week course on American literature of the Vietnam War embarked on a personal pilgrimage to the massacre site. While the professor had experienced a largely welcoming and pro-American atmosphere among students and faculty at Ho Chi Minh City Open University, a deeper understanding of the country's history compelled a visit to confront the physical manifestation of the war's darkest chapters. The journey began with an early morning flight up the coast to Da Nang, the very city where the first U.S. Marine combat troops had landed in March 1965. From Da Nang Airport, a 95-mile drive south led to the My Lai site near Sun Mai. The day spent at the memorial was characterized by near-total silence, a profound quietude broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant sound of rural life. The professor took numerous photographs, attempting to capture the poignant emptiness and the weight of history that permeated the landscape. Yet, almost the only words spoken that day were in response to a simple, yet loaded, question from a somber young woman at the gate of the nearly empty memorial: "What country?" The professor's reply, "United States," was uttered with a palpable hesitation, born of a deep sense of shame. This personal moment of discomfort and introspection highlights a broader American struggle to reconcile with past atrocities and to confront the moral implications of its military actions. That same sense of hesitation and shame, many Americans may now feel, in response to contemporary reports and analyses concerning the United States' role in international conflicts. The People's World, an American progressive news organization, recently drew a stark parallel between My Lai and a hypothetical or alleged incident in MinaB, southern Iran. The article refers to a negligent, horrific bombing of the Shajare Tayyibeh Girls Elementary School in MinaB, southern Iran, reportedly killing 175 students and teachers. While the specifics of this alleged MinaB incident are not widely confirmed in mainstream news, its implication serves as a powerful rhetorical device, a chilling contemporary echo that forces a re-evaluation of current U.S. foreign policy and military conduct. The MinaB report, whether confirmed fact or illustrative concern, taps into a deeply unsettling conversation about civilian casualties in modern warfare and the rules of engagement that govern military actions. The commentary surrounding such incidents often reveals a dangerous ideological divide. For instance, public figures like Pete Hegseth, a Fox News contributor and former Army National Guard officer often referred to as Secretary of War by some commentators, has advocated for maximum lethality, not tepid legality, arguing that stupid rules of engagement interfere with winning. This perspective, prioritizing military victory above strict adherence to international law and civilian protection, is deeply alarming to many and sparks considerable debate. It suggests a willingness to loosen the very ethical and legal frameworks designed to prevent atrocities akin to My Lai. The renowned New York Times columnist Nicholas Kristof has also voiced profound concerns, warning in a March 14 column that the United States is dangerously drifting away from respect for international law, moving towards an era in which anything goes. This sentiment underscores a growing apprehension that the lessons from My Lai, about the absolute necessity of civilian protection and accountability, are being forgotten or deliberately ignored in the pursuit of strategic objectives. The implication is that a culture of tolerance for civilian killings, which undeniably existed during the Vietnam War, might persist or even be exacerbated in the current geopolitical climate, manifesting in different forms but with equally devastating consequences for innocent lives. The comparison between My Lai and the concerns raised by the MinaB report, even if the latter remains in the realm of alleged or hypothetical, serves to highlight a critical issue: the enduring challenge of preventing civilian casualties in conflict. My Lai was unique in its mass scale and the direct, deliberate nature of the killings by ground troops. However, the underlying culture of top-down tolerance for civilian killings is a more insidious and pervasive problem. In the era of modern warfare, characterized by drone strikes, advanced aerial bombardment, and precision weaponry, civilian deaths are often euphemistically labeled collateral damage. This terminology, while seemingly neutral, can mask the human cost and, in some cases, a negligent or even reckless disregard for non-combatant lives. The factors contributing to such a culture are complex. They include intelligence failures, similar to the faulty intelligence that led Charlie Company into My Lai. They involve the dehumanization of the enemy, a psychological tactic that makes it easier for soldiers or commanders to justify violence against non-combatants. The pressure to achieve military objectives, coupled with a perceived lack of accountability for civilian deaths, can also create an environment where the protection of innocent lives becomes a secondary concern. The warrior ethos and the desire for vengeance that fueled the My Lai Massacre are emotional elements that, while perhaps less overt in technologically driven warfare, can still influence decision-making and lead to tragic outcomes. The shift from boots-on-the-ground massacres to remote, technologically driven civilian casualties raises a profound moral question. Are the ethical implications truly different when a civilian is killed by a drone strike rather than a rifle, if the underlying cause is a disregard for their life? Christoph's warning about the United States drifting away from international law is not just about direct military action. It encompasses a broader range of policies that impact human lives. The People's World article specifically mentions the hundreds of thousands have already died of disease and malnutrition as a result of Trump's elimination of foreign aid funding. This expands the definition of civilian death beyond direct combat to include systemic suffering caused by political and economic policies. When a nation disengages from international humanitarian efforts or uses aid as a political weapon, it can inadvertently or directly contribute to widespread human suffering, making the concept of civilian protection far more intricate than simply avoiding direct military targeting. Such actions erode trust, undermine global stability, and ultimately diminish the United States' standing as a moral leader on the world stage. The long-term consequences of such a drift are dire. A consistent disregard for international law and humanitarian principles can lead to a breakdown of the global order, encouraging other nations to act with similar impunity. It jeopardizes the credibility of the United States, making it harder to build alliances, foster cooperation, and exert moral influence. Furthermore, it perpetuates a cycle of violence and resentment, creating grievances that can fuel future conflicts and extremism. The perception that anything goes for a powerful nation risks normalizing atrocities and undermining the very foundations of human rights and justice. The enduring relevance of the My Lai Massacre, 58 years on, is that it serves as a stark reminder of humanity's capacity for extreme brutality and the critical importance of accountability. The oft-forgotten atrocity in Quang Ngai province feels newly meaningful because it forces a renewed contemplation of the ethical responsibilities of military power, the dangers of unchecked authority, and the moral imperative to protect civilian lives in all circumstances. While the specific context of Vietnam in 1968 differs from the complex geopolitical landscape involving the United States and Iran today, the fundamental questions about the value of human life, the adherence to moral principles, and the consequences of systemic failures remain tragically constant. In conclusion, the haunting parallels between historical atrocities like My Lai and the concerns raised by alleged contemporary events, such as the reported MinaB bombing, underscore a persistent and troubling failure to consistently protect civilians and uphold international law. The narrative of My Lai is not merely a historical footnote, it is a profound cautionary tale that demands continuous introspection and vigilance. The world that American foreign policy and military actions are now shaping carries the weight of these past lessons. It is a world where the rhetoric of maximum lethality clashes with the fundamental principles of human rights, and where the erosion of respect for international law threatens to unleash an era of increased suffering and instability. To truly learn from My Lai means to actively and consistently prioritize the protection of innocent lives, to uphold the highest standards of legality and ethics in all military engagements, and to ensure robust accountability for any actions that fall short of these crucial tenets. Only then can the echoes of past horrors truly begin to fade, replaced by a commitment to a more just and humane future.